Welcome to Deer Talk Now. I'm Brad Rucks. Today, we're all about turkeys. It's spring's right around the corner for most of us. If you're in Wisconsin, I know we've been getting a little bit of snow in and out, but spring's here. So what does that mean to us guys that love the turkey hunt? And for me, it's all preparation, right? A lot of guys go out to the same exact spots every single year, or, you have your go-to place. For me, it's about scouting. I think turkeys are the most easily patternable species that's out there. So I'm running my trail cameras. We're running them in the exact same spots we have for deer. We might move up, manipulate them a little bit more, but I want to know what they're doing. So here in Wisconsin, it's kind of unique in that where I am, they winter there, right? So they're still in their big groups. And what I'm looking for is when they're going to transition from eating and picking into the woods from when they're eating out in the farm fields. And a lot of times during those early periods, especially period one, they're not really going out to fields because they haven't greened up yet. There's nothing really out there. The bugs aren't there. And they're eating stuff that greens up in the swamp. And where I'm, that means it's wet, right? So you better know where they're going to be roosted and kind of what their habits are if you're going to be successful. And I'm just going to give you my strategy, and we're pretty successful at it. I mean, on a typical year, me and the boys, and I got 3 boys, we'll shoot anywhere between 6 and 10 gobblers, and that's a normal year for us. And some years we don't really hunt the late periods because we've shot already so many birds, and we've transitioned from turkey hunting to fishing, or from turkey hunting to food plots, probably more like it. But I'm going to give you our strategy right now, what we're doing, why we're successful in these early periods, especially periods 1, 2, and 3. It's doing that scouting with your trail cameras. But it's also doing a little bit of leg work. Like, I'm an early riser, so in the mornings, I'm going to go outside. And a lot of times I'm not owl hooting or anything. I'm just listening to where they're actually roosted in the trees, hearing the gobbles, where they're going off, kind of listening to when they fly down because you can tell which direction they're headed, and just taking all that information in. And it switches as the season goes on. Like for us right now, all the birds are going to be on the closer to the edge because the swamp's really wet, and they're just breaking up out of those groups. And when I say groups, we got big groups of gobblers. I'm talking one flock this winter was 21 longbeards in it, and behind my house there's 13 or 14. We never really had an acrid, but all longbeards as well. So you think, oh my God, you got every turkey in the world. Well, they start breaking up, and it goes like this. That 21 flock will turn into smaller flocks of 3 to 5 or 3 to 6. And pretty soon you're going to be down to only one of those smaller flocks on yours, and then those birds will break up. And yet you'll still have a group of 2 or a group of 3, but very seldom do we hit groups of 4 or 5 that are all roosted together. A lot of times it's at 2 or 3 is a sweet spot. And we plant food plots for them, in advance. So we plant clover. We have our normal clover spots, and I plant clover or winter wheat or winter rye in areas where we like to turkey hunt in the spring. And I do that the year before, or with clover, it's one of those annuals. So it's coming up for the next 6 or 7 years, right? But it's in spots that I know are going to green up soon, and it's going to be in spots where the turkeys want to go. So one of our go-to spots for me, we call it the pond, right? And why it's so good, I'm going to tell you exactly why it's good, is it's got a couple things going for it. One, it's on the edge of the swamp and it's really wet. 2, it's a little bit higher in elevation, and a turkey likes to be high if they're all in lowland areas. 3, it's got preferred roost trees in. And our trees, it's not like the big pines that a lot of you guys envision. It's literally dead ash trees or trees that are fairly open. And they like to get in there because they can gobble. And, we got footage last year alone during period 3. We went down there, and I was hunting with a good friend of mine, J.J. Reich, and we went down the night before. We got one to gobble, and you couldn't tell exactly how close he was, but where he was, I knew he was in the spot where we were going to be able to try to harvest that bird in the morning, and I had pretty good odds. I mean, I'd put on this 80% chance of successfully harvesting that bird. Why? Is because, one, I knew where he wanted to go. I knew he wanted to get out to my clover field that was just on the edge. I knew where all the hens roosted. Boom. So you knew that cover. And even though he wasn't sitting right on the hens, I knew he'd probably fly down rather than go right to the hens. They like to display on the pond bank, come down the pond bank, and he'd either take a right in our lap, or he's going to take a left. Either way, he was in shotgun range for JJ. And that bird did everything you can ask for in a hunt. It was a fantastic hunt, and JJ harvested that bird, gave me high fives, and that bird was with a subordinate bird as well that I was lucky enough to harvest, even though we only took one gun along. But it just shows you knowing your land, knowing the preparation, knowing which way the roost trees are, figuring out which way they want to go, and just manipulating it enough to put yourself in the position. The other thing I like to do is we hunt them a lot of times out of blinds if we're going to bow hunt. So we're getting our blinds out right now. I don't wait until a week before the season or 2 weeks before the season. Our blinds are literally out in place right now. We got a month before the season. I'm letting those turkeys get used to it, and a turkey really doesn't have to get used to a blind. We put a hard shell Maverick down there, I think 3 years ago, and I got videos of turkeys literally picking at the windows on those Maverick blinds because they could see themselves. And we had big flocks of gobblers and hens go within 10 yards of that blind the first day it's set up. So it's not like it has to be. But in deer country, I'm going to tell you why, is because I want to let the deer get used to it, because the worst thing you can do is take a pop-up, put it up on the edge of the field, and next thing you know, the deer start coming in at first light, and now they're stomping and they're acting nervous. Well, the turkey reads that body language, and next thing you know, they don't want to come in. So I want to keep my whitetails kind of relatively calm, let them know that the blind's going to be in there. They get used to it. They walk right past the blind. The funny thing about a whitetail is in the spring, when you're not hunting them, they really don't care about human scent as much as you would think. Once in a while we get snorted at, but for the most part, even when the wind's perfectly blowing in their face, they'll look, they might put one hoof down, but they're going to still come through and go right through those same exact areas. Now, I want to take you a little bit later on in the season. I'm a fair weather turkey hunter, first off. I'm going to tell you what I like to do. If they're not gobbling and they don't want to play, I don't want to play. I'm going to go to work. I got better things to do than sit out all day long to hunt turkeys. I'd rather be at work, because when they're not gobbling, they can be the most frustrating bird in the world. And I don't have the patience to literally sit there all day. Now, I got spots where if we did sit there all day, my trail camera intel, right, it told me exactly where those birds are coming, even probably what time it's going to be. So, I do have the opportunity, if I wanted to try to harvest one of those birds, to go down there. If he's coming in my food plot at 10:30 at 11 o'clock, I just get there at 10, kind of wait. And normally the trail cameras, especially if you use two, you can tell where he's coming in and out of that plot. Again, I'm going to give you a story about my son. Was home last year from college, last period. We went out in the morning. He'd hunted a couple of evenings by himself, saw a couple of longbeards. We knew they were in the area. Plus, I had trail cameras photos of these two same exact birds. On the last Sunday, I was like, Moles, I'm going to go to church with your brother. If you want to stay down here and hunt, go ahead. There's two longbeards that come through that food plot right over there. They come through any time between 10 and noon. So if you want to shoot one, just put in your time, and pay attention. Well, literally, we're going to church at 10, for 10:30 mass, and I get a call at 10:20. I was like, you got him, didn't you? Boom. He said, Daddy, they came in silently. Next thing you know, one was dancing around the decoy, and he's able to harvest them. Again, it's because we put in our time, knew exactly what those birds were doing, and that's what makes it successful. Now, a lot of guys love to run and gun, and I like to do it as well. So my other spring tactic is we're going to set up around them right on the roost, try to kill them then. If by chance we don't kill one, which normally is kind of a rarity, normally we fill our tags, I'm going to let those turkeys get past us, and then I'm going to sneak back into the woods, and I'm going to do the run and gun. I'm just going to try to keep in front of those birds, because normally I know the directions that they're going to be headed towards. Again, so if I can get out in front of them, it's not like I'm trying to call those birds back. I'm already calling them to an area where they want to go. The gobblers are used to hearing hens in that area anyway, and that's why they want to be there, and they'll probably come out. Sometimes, when you do the run and gun, the most frustrated thing is to get caught in a spot where the gobbler knows that you're not there, because he can actually see in, right? And he just doesn't see that other hen. So we always try to set up in pretty thick cover, close enough to the edge of the field where I can see the entire field where he pops out. I can see his reaction to what he's doing when I'm calling. But I can read his body language, right? Because some of those longbeards will sit there and they'll strut forever in that same area. And normally that means two things. One, he's either not interested or two, more likely this one is he's already got a hen with him and you just don't see her. Maybe she's over a little knoll. Maybe she is in the woods a little bit, but she is definitely there, and that's why he won't leave. If he's by himself, he's probably going to come to a hen, especially if you're using a decoy. Let's talk a little bit about decoys. I'm either pro or against. I mean, you could consider me either way. Earlier in the season, I like to use a lot of decoys because I think the birds are still bundled up, right? So if a turkey's used to seeing 5 hens or 6 hens in the area, I like to show that 5 hens are there or 6 hens. I like to use a Jake decoy rather than a Tom decoy because it seems like dominant Tom will come in and literally we'll see that Jake and just come bouncing right in, right? The only time that it doesn't happen is if you got a long beard, and sometimes we get pretty big flocks of Jakes. I'm talking 7, 10, 13. And a couple of years ago, there was a big group of Jakes down there, and it was interesting in that as soon as the longbeards would hit the ground, they would shut up. They would not make any kind of sound, so you really didn't know if they're coming or if they're in the area. Other than, again, your trail camera pictures are going to tell you the story, right? They're going to show you that a longbeard's in the area. If you know he's there, keep calling, even though you don't hear one respond, because you just never know. And I'm going to share another story sitting on the pond. Like I said, it's my favorite go-to spot. That morning, it was full of hens, no longbeards, never heard of one. I did hear a couple Jakes calling a little bit once in a while, but we just kept calling. I called in the whole flock of hens, and they kind of went through me. Pretty soon, we were calling the whole bunch of Jakes, and I think there was 13 of them in total. And sometimes I just like to play around, so I get pretty aggressive with them, just seeing what their reaction would be and trying to get them to gobble, because I think a Jake gobbling kind of makes an interesting sound. It's fun to do. But anyway, what happened is, with me getting aggressive, all of a sudden I heard one gobble, and literally the Jakes all paid attention too. And next thing you know, this longbeard pops up on the other side of the pond. And before I could even literally judge his body language or anything, the Jake saw him, and literally they take off on a dead run. They're chasing this thing, and the turkeys all vanished. I'm like, oh my God, that just kind of sucked, right? That's just my luck. I might as well go to work. And normally I probably would have picked up, but something just told me, just put in a few more minutes to stay down here. The hens are out there. We'll see what will happen. Maybe one will come in silent. And literally, I never called again. That gobbler ditched the hens. He ditched the Jakes, did a big loop, ended up coming right back out on the pond bank on the other side. And now I'm sitting there in between, perfect position, in between him and where the hens were. And it was like a slam dunk, right? He's going to come through, and it was a slam dunk. You think I'm an expert turkey hunter? No, I literally wasn't when I was younger, right? I made a lot of mistakes. Normally, I would have picked up and switched spots because patience is one of my virtues when I'm turkey hunting. The funny part about that is I can literally sit all day long for a whitetail. I can sit all day long for a week long in the same stand if I know there's a giant in there and I have a chance of killing it and I'm not screwing the place up. I'll sit there all week long. For a turkey, you give me an hour in a spot, and if I don't hear one, I'm hard-pressed that I'm not leaving. You have to convince me otherwise. But again, another technique, and we don't use it a lot, and just it's not like I'm afraid of it, but a lot of people are using the repeating technique. And if you guys aren't familiar with repeating, it's literally using a fan, right? You can use a fan, or you can there's umbrellas that look like turkey decoys, or some of them have like a little mock, turkey face and then the full fan. And turkeys are aggressive, especially if they're in a bunch of 2 or 3. And as long as they're not with hens, you can literally put that fan in front of you and start crawling or kneeling and walking right towards that bird or getting closer to them and cutting that distance. Does it work? Absolutely, it works. I watched my little guy when Noah's now 24, but when he was 10, he literally could walk with the fan, and I literally watched him walk across an 80-acre field to a tom and 3 hens, and he just got up to him, but then he didn't know he couldn't hold the fan and pick up the gun, right? He wasn't strong enough. So he just dropped the fan, and then the turkey's totally freaked out and took off on a dead run. But a lot of times those birds, if that's a gobbler that's by himself, he'll actually come to you. So all you have to do is show that fan. And that's another technique we use a little bit is when we're doing the spot around or trying to get around, right? Kind of trying to get in front of a gobbler. Sometimes if they hold up and we got a fan, we'll just stick it out there, just do a little movement of it right to left so that they see that movement and then tuck back into the brush where we are. And now that turkey thinks that, oh, there's a tom over there. He just went back into the brush. He was fanning. He's probably with a hen. I'm going to run over there and check it out. And again, then they eat a lead full face, of lead. So there's so many techniques out there. I've been blessed to hunt with some of the best people in the world. And it's interesting in their calling strategies, right? I don't know if there's a right or wrong. It's really kind of up to you and what you like. How you call, how frequent you call. When you do have a hen buyer, right, very seldom does she shut up. So it's always interesting to the guys say, I just make a yelp and then I don't call for an hour. Now, I'm one of those guys, I'm probably calling every 15 minutes. I'm cutting. If I hear anything that does gobble at that hen cutting call, I'm going to get aggressive. I'm going to cut right back at him. I'm going to try to cut him off. Then I'll be quiet for a while. Then I'll call again to try to find out how close he is, to try to judge if he's coming or not. If he's not coming, I might shut up for a while. If I'm not in a blind, a lot of times when they don't come or they don't seem they're coming, I might move just 20 yards. Why? I know you're taking a chance on doing that, but we've had a lot of success in that because what it does is, again, it keeps that turkey thinking that the turkeys are moving rather than staying in that same spot. I just think it gives them that little bit more realism. Do I get busted once in a while to a gobbler that's coming in silently? Absolutely. But I would say 9 times out of 10, it's the other. 9 times out of 10, I'm more successful doing that. Some gobblers are going to come in there, quietly. So let's say I've been on the morning hunt and I wasn't successful. I'm not going to just quit, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just printing my diaphragm call in my mouth. I'm just going to walk. I'm going to stop every 250 yards trying to strike that bird. If one gobbles, I'll probably look for a spot right there to sit down and try to tuck in a little bit and see if he wants to work. Some birds, will shock gobble. You only hear him once. And then you could sit there the rest of the day and probably never get him to gobble. But if he gobbles again, well, now I know he's interested, right? And now I'm going to try to judge that distance. If he's a long ways away, I might try to cut the distance a little bit. I might go to him. If I think he's 200 yards away, I might try to cut 50 yards off it. Why I don't try to cut 100 off it is because you just never know if he's going to run towards you, because sometimes they will, or sometimes they'll just take their sweet time and come in on slowly. The big determining factor seems to be there for me is if he's alone and how late it is in the season. If it's earlier in the season, he's probably going to take his time coming in, unless he hasn't been or saw any hens for a while. Then he might come running in. Later in the season, it seems like they're not quite as aggressive because they've been hammered on by the neighbors. They call a lot. Whatever the situation is, they're a little bit more call shy. Let's face it, some of these gobblers are 4 or 5 years old. It's not their first rodeo. They're not all worked up like they are during the first part of the spring. The breeding's been going on for a while. It's kind of like a white-tailed deer, right? Once the rut is kind of wind down, they're not as easy to kill as during the peak of the rut. And I think the same goes for turkeys. We've already had late seasons. The first year my son turned 10, he's got a May birthday, and it just happened to be during the 6th period. And we had an early spring, which it looks like this year, all indications is it's going to be an early spring, even though that we have some snow on the ground once in a while. The gobblers already are breaking up, and we're seeing a lot smaller groups, 5s, 4s. Normally this time of year, they're still bunched up, and we're still weeks away from the season. So it just tells me spring's going to be early. The hens are going to be kind of coming out of their bigger flocks as well, disseminating across different properties.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Mossberg. Mossberg has been supplying American hunters with quality firearms for over 100 years. Over the years, they've upheld their commitment to innovation by creating a handful of firearms that have shaped the way we hunt today. For more information, visit mossberg.com.
If you know preferred roost trees for the hens, that's going to bid well for you during the later parts of the seasons. Early seasons, right, they all roost kind of in the same spots, more or less, because in my area it's so wet that they have to. once it dries out, there's preferred bedding or trees that the turkeys are going to want to roost, especially the hens. We got another farm that we hunt on that we call Dave's, and on his, they like to roost in one particular area. And the funny part about Dave's is we go down a shared boundary where he's got the right of way to get into that place. We never drive down. We literally try to go in there as quiet as possible, even if it's walking a half mile, 3/4 of a mile, it doesn't matter. We're going to get in there. I'm going to walk right through underneath the turkey roost because we're going to get in there so early. They're just thinking it's a deer going to their, walking through the bedding area, and they don't really pay attention. You put a car drives down there because there's another guy that has permission on one of the same farms we do, and once in a while they'll drive through that area, and it is like, on a normal day, I'll hear 3 or 4 longbeards gobbling all through this area. That guy drives through that area, we will not hear a longbeard in that whole roosting area. There is just like the Dead Sea. And the same can be said on the other side of my house. Again, it's a long farm lane, and we don't go anywhere near that, but there's a person that turkey hunts on that particular farm, and a lot of times he'll drive with his headlights on, and if he drives all the way down to the end of the lane before he gets out to go to his blind, we will not hear any turkeys gobbling along that whole side. And it always amazes me because I know exactly when that hunter's in, like when he's hunting or when he's not, without ever even looking at it. Because if the birds are gobbling over there, more than likely he's not in that area, when they're up in the roost trees. Now once the fly down happens, it's a different game. They got a great big egg field where the turkeys are going to definitely conjugate, and he's really successful at putting a blind in a couple different areas of that field, and just sitting there and waiting them out. For me, that's not the way I want a turkey hunt. I want them to come to the call in my face, gobbling all the way. That's the way I like to try to hunt turkeys. And for me, that's what's the excitement part of it. And let's face it, pulling the trigger with a shotgun, and I know people can miss, and I missed one once. But normally, man, if they're in range and you got a good shot and you pull the trigger, it's a dead turkey, right? So the real challenge is getting them in there, getting them close, and having that experience. I want to talk a little bit about ammunition for a second. Because if you're not using TSS ammunition, which is heavy shot, it's a tungsten, it's heavier than lead, man, you're missing the boat. It takes, we used to use a 12 gauge, 3-inch 12 all the time turkey hunting. And it was a legit 50-yard gun. We tried to shoot them when they were in 30 to 40 was the sweet spot for that gun. And now I prefer turkey hunting with a 20 gauge. Why? Because that TSS shot, and you can use Federal, Apex, you name it. Most of the heavy shot, the TSS stuff is extremely good. It extends the range, right? So I'm using a TC Encore single shot 20 gauge, and it's a legit 50-yard gun. And it just extends your range. Why I like using the 20 gauge? It's so much lighter, doesn't kick as much. And Dan here in the office, he shot him with a 410 using the TSS as well. So, you don't need to take the beating that we once did when I was a young buck at 24 and got my first turkey gun and shooting, magnum loads. You really don't have to do that as much anymore. In the TSS, yeah, it still does kick, but going down from that 12 to the 20 makes a big difference, or the 12 to the 410 or the 20 to the 410. Last year I shot one with a 28 gauge. Federal came out with a TSS, and they're playing around. It's officially released this year. And JJ killed his bird. We paced it off at 53 yards. Normally I have my rangefinder with me. And there's another little tip. If you're a whitetail guy, take that rangefinder with you. It's just so convenient because a turkey's pretty, when they're not strutting, they look a lot further away than what they are. And when they are strutting, they look a lot closer than what they really are. And what I like to do, not that I'm going to pull it out when the turkey's there, I just like when you're doing the run and gun, just get it up, range different areas around your spot so you know where the 30 is, where you're going to pull the trigger, where the 40 is. If he comes at 50, yeah, that's probably going to be my range. He's got to be in that radius. Once he's there, it just seems to help your breathing and everything else. Once you know he's in the kill zone, right? He is officially in the kill zone, and now it's just pulling the trigger, making sure you got a steady, shot, release, and go from there. I want to take a couple minutes before I end here and talk about bow hunting turkeys, because I know a lot of you guys are up for the challenge. I'm one of those guys that loves it as well. I've shot them both in blinds. I've shot them out of blinds. I will tell you, it's a lot harder getting a shot at a turkey if you're not in a blind. In a blind, it's pretty easy, right? Again, I like to use decoys if I'm bow hunting for them then, because I'm going to let the turkey decoy take all the focus or get that attention of the gobblers. That gives me more than enough time to try to pull back my bow. I'm going to let him use his own fan, or, he swings around so he's facing the other way. That's when I'm going to draw back. I like big expandable broadheads. And I don't shoot them in the normal spot that a lot of people do. This goes back to my early years. There's a guy, his name was Dave Berkeley, and he had feather flex decoys, which if you guys, some of you are going to be too young to know this, but that was the first foldable claspable turkey decoy on the market. They weren't even that real. And Berkeley loved to bow hunt them. And he said, take out the tops of their thighs, and they cannot fly, and then go stand on his head. And I'd shot some, in the other recommended shots right through the wing bone, right through the core where the wing is, and it puts the turkeys right down. I will say this, that I did lose a bird once that I thought I hit absolutely perfect. It wasn't with a big expandable. That changes things now, because you could literally put a 2-inch hole through that bird, and he's probably not going to travel more than 50 yards. But if I shoot him through the thighs, man, he's normally going to be laying within 5 yards of where I shot him. So again, sometimes the air will clip some of the vitals in there, and he'll be dead right away, or you might have to do a little extra work on him. But again, I'd rather harvest my turkey than have him run off, and that's the downside to archery gear. My setup is I always try to have the gobbler decoy facing me. Why that is because normally a tom will come in and try to face him head on, or come over and try to jump on his back, but they kind of do it from the side where they got control of his head, because they're also worried about getting spurred. So that setup works for me well. I know a lot of guys have used the breeding hen in gobbler decoy in combination. I normally just put a hen closer to the blind and the gobbler like he's strutting towards a blind. And 9 times out of 10, when I'm bow hunting, that gobbler will come right in and try to either beat up the decoy or literally face him and give you that perfect shot. So those are basically my techniques on the turkey side of things. Like I said, we're very successful. And I'm not saying I'm the best turkey hunter in the world, but I will say this, I probably know what the turkeys want to do more than anybody else out there. Considering my neighbors, I don't care. We put a lot of time and effort into it. The only thing that times that really change is during the day, if we're working on food plots and if one of the boys hasn't gotten a bird yet. If I see a bird and he's in the area and I see which direction he's going, I will call one of the boy that has the open tag, and we'll swing around and get in front of that bird. And it might take us a couple hours to do it, but if I know which direction he's going to go, I probably know exactly where he's headed to, and it's just a matter of getting in front of him. And it doesn't matter if he's in one food plot. If he's headed in the general direction, he might be in that food plot for an hour, but he's still going to come towards either the neighbor's Oak Ridge, or he's going to go towards the other neighbor's cornfield. So it really depends on whichever way he's faced it, and we're just going to cut him off and kind of wait for him, try to get him to respond, and just ease towards where the last spot where we saw that gobbler to get him to respond. If you guys use these techniques, I think it's going to make you a better turkey hunter. Biggest thing is practice your calls, right? You don't want that call to sound bad. I do it on my way to work. We put a diaphragm call in. I buy a new one every single year. I'm not one of those guys that puts toothpicks in between my reeds to make sure that they don't stick together. In the morning before I go out, I'm going to make sure my reeds are all wet so that they don't stick together. I'm going to leave it in the side of my mouth. My diaphragm call or my slate call is going to be scratched already, so I don't have to do a lot of that in the woods as well. Because when I set up, I want to be as quiet as possible. And people always ask, well, when do you start to call? Normally, I let the gobblers dictate it. Once I hear a bird gobble, I'll probably start calling a little bit, because if you notice in the wild, very seldom do you hear a hen call to a gobbler before you hear a gobbler call from the tree. But once he's calm, then you'll start hearing a little clucks once in a while. And I just want to make sure that he knows where I am. And I want to make sure that he knows I'm the most excited hen in that area about him gobbling. So every time he gobbles after that, I'll cut a little bit and I'll stop. And even if the hens go off, I'll try to cut them off, because I want him to think there's that excited hen in the area. And if you do that, you practice your calls, get good at it, and you don't have to be great. You can even make sound that a turkey doesn't make, and it doesn't really matter. They're going to come. It's just that thing. Other than if you hunt in Alabama. Share one last story with you before I leave. I got to hunt in Alabama. The guys at Realtree had us down. And I'll never forget this, because I was by myself and I had a bird coming right at me, and I was thinking, I'm going to make this bird gobble. And I called, and that bird turned and ran away from me. And I just sat there going, what in the world? And the guides down at, it used to be Red Oak Plantation, I told them what I did. They started laughing. He said, that's the rule, man. Down here, if you got a bird coming towards you, do not ever call again. At home in Wisconsin, that's not the case. I might play around with them a little bit, try to get them gobble more, get some great footage of them, and if nothing else, just enjoy the time out in the woods. It's fun to be out there. Get out there, enjoy the turkey hunt, try some of these strategies, and it's going to make you more successful. I'm Brad Rucks. This was Deer Talk Now. Tune in next week for another great show.
The Deer Talk Now podcast is brought to you by Mossberg Wildlife Research Center, Traditions Firearms, Outdoor Edge Knives, Hoyt Archery, and 10 Point Crossbows.